Dr. David Jockers is a doctor of natural medicine, a functional nutritionist, and a corrective care chiropractor. He's the founder of Exodus Health in Georgia and drjockers.com, a website designed to empower people with science-based solutions to improve their health. He's been published in various popular media outlets, including ABC, Fox News, the Hallmark Channel, and the Dr. Oz Show. And Jockers also hosts a popular functional nutrition podcast. He has authored 2 books, the Keto Metabolic Breakthrough, and the Fasting Transformation. It is a pleasure to welcome Dr. David Jockers to the show. Dr. Jockers, I'm so excited to have you. Our friend, Dr. Becky Campbell, introduced us. We just spent the last 15 minutes catching up, and we just align on so many different things. So it's just such a pleasure to have you on the podcast, to give you the platform. I know how much work goes into maintaining a website and writing books and putting out so much free education for people to really take charge of their life. So thank you for being here. I know every hour is precious, especially having 4 little ones under 6. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Kelly. It's really an honor to be on your show. I love what you're doing and the message you're putting out.
Oh, well, so can we start from the beginning? How did you get excited about being a part of the medical field and the world of natural medicine?
Yeah. So growing up, I was an athlete growing up. My mom actually was studying to become a naturopath. So she actually is a nurse practitioner and a naturopath right now. When I was a teenager, I rebelled, just like all teenagers do. She wanted me to eat kale. Back then in like the 90s, early 90s, it was like she believed in a macrobiotic diet. She was getting this education that a macrobiotic diet, which is not what she or I teach these days, but, it was like this low fat diet, lima beans in every meal, soy and kale without any, like I like kale if it's cooked in, butter with onions and it's got herbs and stuff, but this was like steamed kale, just completely bland. Right. And so of course I would rebel. And my mom would say, you really need to eat the kale because it's going to give you more energy. It's going to help your skin. My brother had acne. I didn't want to have acne. So I was like, oh, if it's going to help my skin, if it's going to help my energy, like I was an athlete. She's like, yeah, it's going to help you perform better. It's got, calcium, magnesium. She started telling me about the nutrients that were in it and how that would enhance my performance. And I was all in. I was like, all right, whatever I got to eat, I'll swallow it down. Doesn't matter how bad it tastes. So I would ask her, I would ask her what I should eat before I, have a baseball game or whatever. I played high school baseball. And so she would give me tips and things like that. And that just kind of led to me becoming a personal trainer. In my late teens, early 20s, I was actually working at a grocery store, and my boss at the grocery store that hired me there was really into fitness. And he actually left the grocery store and opened a gym, and he hired me. Right. I had no experience or anything. And I became a personal trainer and I started training people. And I really loved it. I loved seeing the transformation in people. But I just realized, like, you know what? I felt like I really need to do more. And I started studying exercise physiology and this and that. And a lot of the students I was in class with weren't really excited about it. They were just kind of doing the bare minimum to get by. And I was passionate about it. I was wanting to learn everything I could about anatomy, physiology, exercise physiology. And God just spoke to me and said, hey, and it was interesting because I was actually spotting somebody at the gym, and he's like, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm like, I don't know. I probably just want to run a fitness center, this and that. Started telling him how I wanted to impact community wellness. And he said, you should think about becoming a chiropractor. And I didn't know what a chiropractor was. I thought, my dad used to go when he had back pain. So I'm not a huge guy, so I had no idea. I'd never seen an adjustment or anything like that. So I looked into it, and I found the philosophy that the body heals itself. It doesn't need any help, just no interference. And the philosophy of chiropractic was to remove interference on the spine and the nervous system and allow the body to do what it was designed to do, which was heal and repair. And I was like, I love this. I'm all in. I'm already into nutrition, exercise, optimal performance. Chiropractic's the next step. And so I started basically getting all my prereqs and all that kind of stuff to go to chiropractic school. And that's when I really developed irritable bowel syndrome. And back then I was eating a healthier diet than anybody that I knew. I was a lacto-ovo vegetarian, right? Okay. So I thought this was healthy. That means I would eat dairy products. I would eat eggs, but no meat, right? Maybe some fish, but like no meat, because I thought meat was bad for you. And I would eat whole grains, right? So whole grains at every meal, soy burgers, stuff like that. So I wasn't eating McDonald's, but I stayed away from fast food, that kind of thing. But anyways, I was eating these foods and I started developing irritable bowel. So I would have constipation, diarrhea, I would have intense cramping. And even though I was a personal trainer, right, I got to the point where I started losing weight and I was lifting heavy. I was doing all these things and I was eating like 6,000 calories a day. I would eat from the moment I woke up till I went to bed, right? I would have a protein shake before I went to bed. And I thought, if I don't do that, I'm going to lose weight. And so I was doing that to gain weight, right? And then all of a sudden the gut issues started getting so bad to where I did start losing weight, even though I was consuming massive amounts of calories, just really hyper inflaming my body. And I got into graduate school and, I started there and the weight loss just continued. And I was even taking, I think it was called visceral physiology or visceral diagnosis. And so they would take my blood pressure, right? So we'd have to train on taking blood pressure. And my blood pressure was like 90/50, which is really low. It's too low, right? And so I would go from sitting to standing. I had orthostatic hypotension. So I would get really, really dizzy. So because my blood pressure wasn't enough to get enough perfusion and oxygen into my brain. So I would get really, really dizzy. And this is a sign of basically adrenal stress or what we call hypothalamic pituitary adrenal dysfunction, where my brain wasn't able to communicate well with my adrenals in order to create the right stress response to divert blood flow up into my brain. And this is all because of issues in my gut. And a friend of mine said, you know what? He's like, you need to come off of gluten. You need to come off of grains. He turned me on to this book. Well, first book I read was The Maker's Diet, right? And that was by Jordan Rubin, a friend of mine now. And so I changed to like sprouted grains and things like that, but I was still eating a lot of grains. I was eating a lot healthier diet, started eating meat. And so I started feeling better, gradually feeling better. And then I found Dr. Mercola's website. And this is like 2004, 2005, back, many, many years ago. And he was talking about a no grain diet, right? And so I went off of grains and I started gaining my weight back, started feeling significantly better. And I had like 7 a.m. classes, things like that. So I actually started getting to the point where I was so satiated from my dinner that I just didn't want to eat anything in the morning. And I would work out in the morning with my best friend, and I would just drink a ton of water. And so I remember I was one of those guys who would bring like a gallon jug of water around, those guys, right?
Yes, I know.
And, and so I would bring this gallon jug of water to class with me, and I would drink this whole gallon before lunch, like before 12 or noon. And it was amazing. I felt so good. I went to the top. I became, I was at the top of my class. I was excelling academically. I gained my weight back, right? And this all happened in like a 2-year span, right? This whole process of me losing the weight, getting sick, going to chiropractic college, and then figuring these things out and regaining the weight. And this is when I discovered intermittent fasting. I had never heard the term. This is 2005. Never heard the term. Nobody was talking about it. In fact, I was taking classes with a PhD in exercise physiology, and she was talking about how, you need to eat the moment you wake up. You need to get this amount of carbs, from classical training. And I started telling her what I was doing. I'm like, yeah, I don't eat in the morning. I work out like really intensely for a half hour lifting weights, and I'm not hungry. Right. And I just don't eat. I just hydrate really well. And I feel the best I've ever felt. And she's like, well, you're doing something wrong. Like you need to do this. You know what I mean? I'm like, but I feel good this way. And so I used to tell people, I think it's the water. Like, that's what I thought it was. I'm like, I think it's the water. It's like increasing my sarcomere. And so I'm getting better contractile strength from it. I had kind of this whole idea made up, this physiological explanation. And I'm sure good hydration was a good thing. But it wasn't until later, like 2008, 2009, that I discovered this term intermittent fasting. And I was like, wow, that's actually what helped change and save my life. And so I've been teaching that and practicing that ever since. And I opened my clinic in 2009. So I graduated in 2008, opened my clinic with no money. In fact, the economy had just crashed, so I couldn't get a business loan. I actually opened it on credit cards. Somehow I got it's just a build it and they will come. I just had this dream, this vision. And somehow I got the financing for it. It's really a miracle. It's a long story. That's another podcast. Yeah. But I opened my clinic. I lived in my clinic, in the back of my clinic, on a mattress and I showered across the street in a 24-hour gym for 2 years until I had paid off, all my loans, my student loans, all that kind of stuff. Then I bought the closest available house to my clinic. I literally could walk to my clinic. And I was taking care of patients, for years. Right. And then along the way, really, as I started my clinic, people started asking me lots of questions, just like you get, Kelly. I mean, just like all of us in this field, people would ask, what do I do for my thyroid? What are the best foods I should eat? How do I reduce inflammation in my joints? And so I started taking these different topics, and I always enjoyed writing and just the idea of writing. And in fact, Dr. Mercola was a huge influence on me because I would read everything that he put out. And in school, I used to write a lot in school, and I used to do talks and presentations and things like that. And people said, you're going to be the next Mercola. And I was always like, what are you talking about? Like, there's no way I could build something like that. I have no savviness when it comes to technology. I could never do that. But this idea was in my head, like, I need to create content. I need to create online content. So I started writing articles on all these topics that my patients were asking me, and I was publishing them on other websites, Green Med Info, Natural News, right? A lot of these other websites that were popular at the time that allowed for guest posting. And so I was creating content for them, and people started finding me, in Australia, and they wanted to do consults with me about nutrition and functional medicine out in, all over the world. And I realized, wow, people are actually seeing this content. And my idea with it was, I just wanted to create a library or a database that I could share with my clients. Like, if they had this question, I could give them a professionally published article that could answer their question, would save me time in the clinic. So I didn't have to say the same thing to every person, 5 times a day, right? Save me time. And I thought, if they really like it, if it's really good content, they'll share it with their friends. And so I started getting a lot of referrals that way, working with people all around the world. And it just got really, really busy. I hired other doctors to help. And then I realized, I really need to turn this into my own website. And that's what I did. And that just kind of took on a life of its own. And, I eventually sold my clinic because I just found that I thoroughly enjoyed the content creation, the creative element of creating content so much that that's really what I wanted to do full time. And, flash forward, now it's 2022 and I've been doing this. I've sold my clinic in 2019 and I've been doing this, full time ever since.
Wow. It's so interesting because we have a little bit of the same beginning story of writing for other people. And I don't know if you feel this way, but it solidifies the information in your brain when you have to teach it to others, when you have to regurgitate it in word on a page or in a presentation to a group live. I mean, that was to take all that information in and find a way to explain it that it, like, a layperson understands. It's just, I feel like that's some of the most fun parts of at least my job, and you've made it your full-time job. What was the transition from writing for other people to writing for your own blog? And how did you get people to come to drjockers.com? And what else? I mean, you're offering now courses and you have your books, it is content creation heavy over there. So how often are you producing content and sharing with people, and what can people expect if they head to your website?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And, it's one of those things where it's like a few years ago, somebody said, man, just out of nowhere, I see Dr. Jockers stuff everywhere. And it was like 2018. I'm like, no, I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm like, it wasn't out of nowhere. Right. And so I think it just started. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing, but I hired a lady that was actually a patient of mine who was very tech savvy, and she created websites. So she created a website for me, and I said, I need to learn how to use WordPress. I just somebody needs to show me how to do this. If I know how to do this, I'll figure this out. And I hate learning technology. I'm so I think it was 2012 when I got my first smartphone. Right. So it was I'm definitely a late bloomer. Yeah, exactly. Right. Late adopter in that cycle. But I was like, what? I just knew, inherently, I think it was just the Holy Spirit inside of me said, hey, you need to figure this out. So that's what I did. I learned how to use it. And I had a radio show here in the Atlanta area. And I didn't feel like I was really getting a great return on investment. I was enjoying doing it, but I didn't feel like it was very expensive. I didn't feel like I was really getting the return on investment I wanted. So instead, I had met a graphic designer in the area, and I said, "Hey, I want to hire you, right? I want you to work for me." So he started working for me, and I diverted my income to that, and so we just started creating content for the site, right? So great images. And I said, you know what? There's one thing. I'm looking at all these other websites out there. And I have some friends too. Dr. Josh Axe is a friend of mine. We've known each other since probably 2005, 2006. And he was starting to grow really fast. And I was like, what are you doing? And so he started giving me some tips. And then I looked at his site and I looked at a bunch of other sites, Mercola, a lot of these sites that I looked up to. And I said, what about these sites? Sometimes I'll start reading an article and then I'll just want to click off. Right. And I realized, you know what? I don't feel like there's enough images because I'm a very visual learner. I like to see images and diagrams and things like that. Some people really love video. Some people really love, just written word. For me, I really enjoy reading, but I also enjoy looking at really good graphics. And so that's kind of what I tried to model. I said, you know what? We're going to be the most image rich. Our articles are going to be so rich with images to give people the best possible reader experience. And they're going to be complete and thorough. Right. And that's really the feedback that we get is that when people, honestly, like most of the articles on our site, not all, but probably 80% are like ebooks. Honestly, they are. So if you look up like we published one recently on post-viral syndrome, right? Obviously, a lot of people are dealing with this. And so I didn't want to write, the 3 best foods for post-viral syndrome. We wrote the comprehensive guide, to post-viral syndrome, right? And so it takes a lot of time and effort and work. And I don't do the writing now. I am the content editor. So I create outlines for content and then work with the designer. Once the articles are written, I go through the studies, some of the studies, things like that, things that I definitely want to make sure. I want to make sure, like, before I give it to the writer, that it's going to be super thorough and where I want it. Or otherwise I got to do it on the back end. Yeah. And so, I just want to make sure that anything we publish, it's like the best article on that topic that you could possibly find. And so somebody should go to that article, go through it. And if they're really interested in that topic, be like, wow, I just found everything I need to do right here. And so that's kind of been the idea there. And so we pride ourselves in just creating the world's best health content. We don't publish anywhere near as much as other websites because I'm hands-on with everything. Whereas like Josh Axe, my friend, he's hands off with everything on that's being published, right? People don't know that he's not actually writing it. Yeah. He's got writers. Now he's got a great team, but he's not actually writing it. If he was more involved, it would take away from other things he does, but it would probably be even better, And so it's kind of the way I look at it is like, hey, this is where, this is the way I looked at it when I was a chiropractor was I was good at adjusting. I was good with people. I'm a good listener. I have compassion, empathy. I would pray with my patients, but I never felt like I was the world. This is what I'm the best in the world at this. I never felt like that. Right. Whereas when it comes to creating online health content, I really feel like I'm the best in the world at this. And that's kind of why I transitioned fully into this, that along with having so many kids so quickly. Right. And being able to support my wife more at home. And not being in a clinic. Those are some of the major reasons that I transitioned to this, because I just felt like I'm the best in the world when it comes to creating this online health content, right? And I can hire somebody that actually is a great chiropractor that just really wants to focus solely on that and take great care of patients, or sell my clinic to that person, which is what I did. And that's their sweet spot. Whereas this is my sweet spot and I need to go for this.
Definitely. Well, it is your sweet spot, and your website covers so many topics. And like you said, it's more of like a guide when it comes to explaining a specific topic to someone. Like you said, post-viral, there was something on postbiotics that I thought was really super interesting. Like you're deep diving all these topics and giving people like the keys to the kingdom, really, of like, this is what it is. and explaining it in a way that's easy to understand, using those amazing graphics. And I think that is so empowering for the community, because a lot of times we only are getting 15 minutes, a half hour with a doctor. They may be a Western trained doctor. They may really be looking to prescribe and kind of push you out the door. And so this is, one of the things that I'm so passionate about is getting people excited about nutrition through this podcast, through my Instagram. But it's because I know the minute people start to feel excited about the science, they can heal themselves just like you did way back in the day, to really keep digging for what's going to make them feel their best. We were talking before the podcast, when you know a lot, or when you're diving deep into the science of everything, and you're a parent, raising kids, you care so much about your family and you want to do the best by them. But there's a lot of topics out there that you've covered, and there's a lot of science that you can implement. So I'm actually curious, now that you're taking and regurgitating all this information in such a great and easy way, what are you taking into your own family's home, and what practices are you using personally? I'd like to talk about fasting and keto. Yeah. I know you've written about both. And what practices are you using, like in your home with your kids? Like how is your wife eating and implementing this science, and how is she sharing it with your children for their health and longevity? I mean, it's so amazing to think about them being so little and having a little bit more control probably than when they're in high school or college. But I'm just curious, like what have you taken and kept in practice for yourself personally? And what are we using with your family?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, for me personally, yeah, I do a lot of stuff. So like I woke up this morning and I oil pulled, and I went outside in my front yard, bare feet on grass, right? And I pray while I'm oil pulling, which helps pull out, bacterial endotoxins that are in your mouth. And that's like 10 minutes, in the morning. And I've got little, blueberry bushes and apple tree and different things like that in my yard. So I'm praying over those trees. I'm praying over my family. Right. And I get up usually around 6 a.m. and I'm doing that, which this time of year, it's great because like the sun's up, right. And things like that. So it's beautiful. And then I actually go in, I start working. And then around, I help wake my kids up and everything. And then usually around 8:30 or so, I actually go in my infrared sauna. So I have an infrared sauna, and I try to get in there 3 to 5 times a week. It's a little easier on the weekdays than the weekends because we don't have childcare on the weekends. And so I'm the childcare, right? I help my wife sleep in a little bit. And so I go in my sauna, I read the Bible, I read, whatever other books that, that are inspiring me. Or, I'm really into like, what's it called? Just really understanding like apologetics for the Bible and things like that. So I'm reading inspiration, in the morning, and then I have a red light therapy device that I use, and I have a vibration platform, and I actually wear a head weight on there, which is something I learned in chiropractic, which helps pull out forward head posture. So I wear a little head weight. Okay. I don't know if you know Yoni Witten, but he's really big on this as well. So he's like a pain fix expert. This is something I would recommend for my clients in chiropractic, which helps with the cervical lordosis in my neck. And I wear that on the vibration plate while I have my red light and infrared shining on me. So I'm kind of like doing all those biohacking techniques, right?
Got them all stacked up.
Yeah, stack it all up, right? And I actually took a walk right before I do that. So a lot of times I'll take a walk, sometimes with my wife, sometimes not, depending on her schedule, before I do that. So I usually try to get like a good hour and a half of working in to get stuff done, because I do really well when I'm able to cross things off of a list. Like if I know, okay, I knocked out 3 things already this morning, like I'm rocking and rolling for the day. So then I do my biohacking after that. It's kind of like a break, right? Mm-hmm. Then I get back to work, and I'm usually working till 12:30 or so. And then that's when I lift weights, right? So 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And sometimes on Sunday, but I'm lifting weights, usually from 12:30 to like 1:30, somewhere in there, 12:30 to 1:15. And my wife joins me as well. So we do upper body on Monday and Thursday, lower body on Tuesday and Friday. And we have our home gym, fortunately, that we're able to use. And then from there, I eat lunch, right? And that's kind of where I break my fast, is usually somewhere between 1 and 2 p.m. Right. And I feel great. I always tell people, I'm really never hungry until I start eating, right? It's like when I start eating, then my body says, okay, yeah, we need to get some calories in here, right? It's so like it awakens my digestive juices, my digestive system. So that's when I eat. And I usually have like a big protein smoothie. I know you're a big fan of those, right?
Yep.
With like grass-fed whey protein and collagen protein in there. So I do that. It's really easy on the system. I love Paleo Valley meat sticks. So sometimes I'll grab a couple of those and have those with my lunch. And sometimes I'll just like dice up a little cucumber, put some olive oil on it and some herbs and things like that and have that. Or if I have leftovers, I make this amazing Mediterranean salad that I love. It's got artichokes, hearts of palm, tomatoes, bell peppers, cucumbers. We'll use sometimes some feta cheese in there, something along those lines, and black olives. I love black olives. Sometimes we'll put green in there. Green, actually, most people don't know this. Green olives have less fat. Black olives have more fat, but green olives have a lot more polyphenols, particularly oleocanthols, which are being studied for anti-cancer benefits, right? So you get more polyphenols in the green. That's what they press for the olive oil if they make really good olive oil. But the black is where you get more fat, so you get more calories there. And to me, the black tastes better. I don't know about you. What do you like, green or black?
I mean, I am an equal opportunity olive eater. My children, their Thrive Market has little individual olive packs for snack, and those are constantly in my diaper bags. It's one of the things I always tell people, if you're looking in like the Paleo Valley beef sticks or chomps, I know Thrive has some too. Paleo Valley does have a really clean casing on their beef sticks, which I learned a little bit about. So I love their stuff too. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what's in the diaper bag or on the go with us when we have kid snacks.
For sure. And going to my kids, they have olives every single day. It's like part of their lunch, right? So usually for my kids, they're eating, we try not to give them snacks, as much as possible. So if we do, like we tell them, of course they want crackers and all that kind of stuff. My wife is, I'm more disciplined and I can eat like the same thing every day, right? And be happy. My wife is a different type of personality. So I'm a red kind of driver type personality. She is very fun oriented. She really balances me out. She is, super extroverted. I'm introverted. She's all about having fun and this and that. So we balance each other really, really well in that perspective. But for her, she needs variety. Yeah. Right. And so she's always looking for like, oh, I used to love, whatever, this type of cookie, chocolate chip cookie. What do I find that's, organic, right? Gluten-free chocolate chip cookie. And I'm like, yeah, it's not really, I wouldn't call that healthy. I'm telling her that. She's like, well, yeah, but just every now and then. Right. So she's more of the one that's kind of, doing things like that. And she'll try to find different recipes that are mimicking, things that she grew up eating that are healthier, using healthier ingredients and stuff like that. And so for breakfast, usually our kids are having eggs and avocado. That's normal. And they'll like rotate based on how they like their eggs. Like for like a month, they'll say, I only want sunny side up, and then they'll decide they want hard boiled or poached or scrambled or whatever it is. So we get the pasture raised eggs for them, avocado. If they're on the go, we have Paleo Valley protein bars, right? They're superfood bars. Mm-hmm. So that's a great thing on the go. Like this week they're doing vacation Bible school. So they've got to get out early. My wife's teaching there. And so like, we don't have time to make breakfast, right? So they're just grabbing the Paleo Valley superfood bars, which are great. We do the perfect keto bars are another good one. Both of those are going to have lesser of an impact on their blood sugar. The Paleo Valley bar's got like spirulina in it, a bunch of really, really good stuff. We also give them these energy bits, which are these little spirulina tablets, right? That we give them. I don't know if you're familiar with them. So little spirulina or chlorella tablets. So we'll give them for however old they are. Like my boys are 6. We give them 6 every day. One of my daughters is 4, right? And I've got a 1-year-old daughter. She can't obviously eat that at this point, but we'll give them the spirulina or the chlorella, which is a single cell algae that's incredibly powerful for your body. Chlorella is the most potent source of chlorophyll to help cleanse your system, rebuild your blood, right? It's got a lot of magnesium in it, things like that. So anyways, we'll give them that as well in the morning. And it like, the only issue with that is like, it gets up in their teeth. So we have them, yeah, like cakes up in their teeth. They eat it. They actually don't mind the flavor. Actually, to me, it tastes good. But it like cakes up in your teeth. So you got to eat it first. And then whatever you're eating after that kind of cleanses it. But it actually is really good for your teeth. It actually helps clean your teeth as well, clean bacteria and things like that. So it reduces plaque. So they're doing that usually in the morning. And then they have Friday fun day. And that's when like my wife will make oatmeal or something like that for them. But when we do oatmeal, we make sure we put in a whole bunch of collagen protein in there. We have like the Organifi pumpkin spice, or I don't think it's pumpkin spice, but it's like the Organifi's got one that's got like turmeric and all kinds of stuff like that. So we'll put that in there and mix it in there really good. So we make sure we've got protein in there. That it's more balanced, right, than just straight oatmeal. And sometimes they'll do cereal and they'll do like, we have the Perfect Keto. They have like a new cereal out. So we'll do that with raw milk. We get raw milk from our grass-fed farmer, our local farmer. So it's grass-fed local milk. And actually, we started getting that because my twins, we actually made a homemade baby formula because my wife couldn't produce enough breast milk. And so we were making a homemade baby formula, which is actually that article, the recipe that we have has gone viral with the baby formula shortage. Like literally we've had like over 200,000 visitors in the last month just from that baby formula recipe because we published it. And we have like a whole lot of different links to different ideas people can use, things like that, and what we've done. And then for our youngest daughter, my wife was not able to produce as much. She was able to do it for six to 8 months. But over the last several months, she wasn't producing enough. So we transitioned into this sort of formula. And now we're also doing the baby-led weaning, I think it's called. You're familiar with that, right? Where she's just eating, like she was eating steak. Now she's got some teeth. So she was eating some steak with us, just tiny pieces last night. But she still likes her milk. So we make this homemade baby formula with grass-fed raw milk.
Love it.
And it's the Weston A. Price Foundation recipe, except we tweaked it just a little bit. Like they have gelatin in it, which we found just would gelatinize a little bit. And it would just the texture of it wasn't as good, and she would choke on it. So we just switched it out for collagen peptides, and things like that. So yeah, so we made a couple tweaks. I think that made it a little better, a little more palatable. But yeah, it's a great recipe. So she's doing that. And then she's eating real foods outside of that. And then for dinner, we're usually having wild caught salmon, grass-fed steak, Brussels sprouts. Like last night we had the Mediterranean salad that I make. We had grass-fed steak. We had Brussels sprouts, right? That's pretty much what we were eating last night. And then, every now and then, like once or twice a week, my wife will, make one of her little spaghetti alternatives or something like that. So she has some variety, or lasagna alternatives or whatever it is. And then every now and then, probably like twice a month, we'll do, like, people ask me, they'll be like, what do you cheat on? That's a common question that I get. They'll be like, what do you cheat on? And I'm like, I really like dark chocolate, but that's not really a cheat because I get the 88% dark chocolate.
It's food.
Right?
You eat it.
Yeah. So that's real food, and that's got tons of polyphenols, really low sugar, things like that. But I would say my favorite is the Against the Grains pizza. It's like a cauliflower cassava pizza crust. It's definitely not low carb. So it's good if you're carb cycling, right? This would be a decent one. It's got some, not great vegetable oils in there, unfortunately. Right. So I don't give I don't give 5 stars to all the ingredients there, but I would say it's better. It's one of the better ones that you find out there, and it tastes amazing. And we'll put turkey, pepperoni, black olives, things like that on it. My kids love it. And we just have a pizza night. So we usually do that like twice a month.
So funny because I actually just got a couple of those. Jason Karp, the owner of Human Co., purchased Against the Grain pizza.
Oh, did he?
He owns Snow Days and Cosmic Bliss, which used to be Coconut Bliss ice cream. And he was the owner of Who Kitchen in New York and the chocolate company. So he's trying to compete against General Mills and be like the healthier version of all of that. So I'm glad you're giving it 4 stars, but I'm still excited to try it because I think that's one of the things that for a lot of my clients, if they're used to getting pizza delivered, if I can switch them over to a snow days, to an against the grain, or, we love Capellos. Their almond flour naked crust is great. And it's really fun for the kids to load it up and cook it in the oven in like 12 minutes, way faster than the pizza even being delivered to your house. So we'll have to try that one next. Thanks for the tip.
For sure. I like the pesto flavor against the grains. I think that's the best one. Yeah.
Okay. I'll check that out.
And then with my kids, my boys are 6-year-old. They're twins, identical twins, 6 years old. They're awesome. They remind me of myself when I was a kid, and they're actually really easy. Like, they're on board with whatever we want them to do. They're just very compliant kids. They make us look good as parents. And then my 4-year-old daughter, she's like the opposite. She's like, everything's got to be her way, and if she's in a good mood, maybe she'll eat her food. If not, she's super picky. Right. And so, it's one of those things, different, unique personalities.
You got to have the ones that test you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yep. It was so cute. This morning, she came in my office when I was working. She got up a little bit early and she's like, "You're my servant leader." And I'm like, "Oh, that was the cutest thing ever." She gave me a hug and she's like, "You're my," because that's sometimes my wife will say that. Yeah. Right. And so I'm like, "Did mommy tell you to say that?" It's so cute. Right. It brought a tear to my eye.
That's adorable. That's adorable. Well, outside of like the food realm with your kids, I know you're homeschooling your children. What is most important to you as a parent when it comes to, speaking of being a servant leader or guiding your guiding your family as like the patriarch? Like, what's most important that you infuse into your children, and like, what are some of like those key pillars in your life that you want them to have as they become adults?
Well, number one, I want them to know that they're loved, that we are so proud of them, and that we believe in them. Right. So I think those are probably the most important things that, I want them to know as far as from us as parents. And I want them to know that God put them here for a purpose and for a reason, and it's greater than themselves. Right. And life doesn't revolve around them. And if they can figure out how they can serve others and create value for the people around them, then they're going to have an amazing life. Right. And so those are the things that we want to teach them. We want to instill in them, obviously I'm an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. So we kind of have this bent in bias. It's like, hey, my kids, they need to learn how, like I heard this idea, before they get a smartphone, they should be able to have some level of like a profitable business. It could be.
It's Katie Wells.
Yeah.
That's so the wellness mama. Katie Wells. I love that. It's so good.
Exactly. I mean, the reality is that they should have a level of responsibility before demonstrating and acting out responsibility before they get something as dangerous as a smartphone. Right. Because it really is dangerous. It's like, I mean, honestly, like a smartphone is kind of like, leaving your kid alone. I mean, it's like leaving your kid alone in a grocery store. They're going to go for the sugar aisle and buy, whatever they want, that's junk food, and put that in their bodies. Right. And that's kind of what's going to happen if you just give them a smartphone, if they don't have, some level of responsibility and discipline. And we want to teach them delayed gratification. Right. And I think as an entrepreneur, that's a big element of that, like, because there's a lot of delayed gratification. There's a lot of upfront effort that goes into it with very little payoff, when you first start. And so teaching delayed gratification, there was this experiment that was done at Stanford. I don't know if you're familiar with it, the marshmallow experiment. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I saw a video on that.
They gave marshmallows to these kids and they said, you have a choice. You can eat that marshmallow now, right? I'm going to walk away for 10 minutes. You can eat that marshmallow now and enjoy it, and that's all you'll get. Or you can wait till I come back and then I'll give you another marshmallow if you don't eat it. Right. And so it's kind of a test of their level of delayed gratification. Could they suspend their desire, right, for consuming this marshmallow long enough so they get a payoff when the person comes back? And they followed these kids throughout their lives. This was done in the 70s, and they followed these kids throughout their lives. And the ones that demonstrated this level of delayed gratification, that waited and got the second marshmallow, they had higher levels of, college graduates. They made, I think it was like 4 times more money, better marriages, right? More successful relationships. And the ones that didn't They had a higher level of delinquency. Many of them dropped, not a huge percentage, but a lot of them dropped out of high school. A lot of them ended up in prison, failed marriages, things like that. And you realize it as an adult, right? If all you're doing is going after what feels good in the moment, you were going to ruin relationships. You're not going to be able to be successful in, pretty much anything that you do. There's a level of grit and determination you've got to have to make anything work, right? Everybody, on their wedding day thinks, oh, this is going to be the most amazing thing ever, right? And then all of a sudden, you get into real life and things happen. And if you don't have the grit, if you're not committed, right, fully committed to it, that relationship is going to start to break down. And it's the same thing with a business or anything else. And so I really want to teach them delayed gratification. I want to teach them the value of discipline. And I learned a lot of that through being an athlete growing up. Right. And so my boys are athletes. I coach them. I'm their soccer coach. They're great soccer players. And my daughter's starting to do gymnastics. And so we really think that sports helps teach kids. I mean, obviously not all children are going to be interested in sports, but we feel like if they are, that's a great place for them to start to learn discipline, delayed gratification, things like that. And so, that's kind of one outlet that we can use for that, but we also homeschool them and, it's great. We want to affirm them and where they're strong and help build them up where they feel like they're weak or where they're just, lacking or not as focused. And, I think those are probably the biggest things.
Well, I have to say, we have to take it back to the beginning of the podcast where you had 2 years of living in the back of your office and talk about delayed gratification, talk about all the work in writing articles and putting out content for 10 years to then, have a baby formula article go viral now in 2022. I think it's important for people to realize like the entrepreneurial journey is all about delayed gratification, and your success now is on the heels of learning that as a child and being able to grit through the hard times in the beginning. And it's never just handed to anyone. And it's important that people know that, because I think going to your website, they would just be like, oh, or your Instagram or your podcast, they would just say, oh, it's got it all figured out. It's a lot of work in the long run. How are you, other than sports, how are you implementing delayed gratification with your kids on like the regular in your day-to-day at home?
Well, a big thing that we do is, it's funny because my boys, when they were young, they would eat their dinner and then they would look around, they would say, can we have something else? And so it's kind of their way of trying to negotiate for like, some sort of dessert. Right.
I'm in that right now.
We still, oh yeah. And how old are your kids?
3.5 and 1.5.
Yeah,
and the 1.5 can't verbalize it, but
right.
Sebastian is all about negotiating. And it's
totally.
funny because I'll tell him, I'm like, you want to go ahead and try to negotiate, and we'll have a little conversation. But it is definitely, I mean, I don't know, people might think I'm militant, but my kids get dessert on the weekends and they get cartoons on the weekends. And other than that, we don't do it.
That's smart. And that's a great approach to doing it. So what we've done is like, we usually use fruit as kind of like what they get. And so they'll eat their meal. Right. And then they're like, so we still use this term. It's, it's quote unquote dessert, but it's the term we use is something else. Right. Yeah. And so they get, like a cut up apple or an orange or something along those lines, berries. We do a lot of berries and things like that. So yeah, they will always ask, but they have to eat all their food. They also have to have had good behavior. Right. So we give them 3 strikes if they're not behaving well. And we usually give them strikes quickly. It's a big thing I learned is like, you can't warn about strikes. Like, I'm going to give you a strike, right? They just keep going. It's like, okay, strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. Okay. You know what? I'm sorry, Joyful. That's my daughter. Yeah. You're not going to be able to have something else after lunch. Yeah. And she's like, can I have something else tomorrow? And I'm like, well, if you're well behaved, so then like all of a sudden she realized, okay, now I don't get something. So we're trying to teach them that, there's consequences, right? And owning their consequences, I think is a big factor in it. So that's one element I would say, with food is, basically rewarding good behavior and rewarding, obviously being able to eat healthy foods first, right? With that. So I think that's a positive thing. And let's see, what else are we doing? my wife would probably be more the specialist. She's the teacher.
Yeah, so good.
But
those are pretty
yeah,
good examples. Don't worry
yeah,
about it.
yeah. With my boys, they're just the easiest kids to parent. So like if they've got a lot of energy in the house, we'll be like, we have a basketball hoop out there. This is one thing we learned as well. This is a tip, especially if you have boys that are close in age. All right. So we used to say, okay, each of you go out and score 50 points, right? Which would, we knew that's going to be like 10 or 15 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So they go out, they have like their own little 3-point line and 2-point line. And so they start shooting and stuff, and they would compete. And inevitably, like 2 minutes in, somebody's crying, somebody's upset, So we just started saying, you guys are on the same team, go score 100 points. Like you're on the same team, you got to do it together. 100 points. I want to see if you can do it within 15 minutes. And they're just like competitive. So all of a sudden they're like sprinting outside and they're working hard together. You know what I mean? And then, they get their points and they're coming in. They're like, Daddy, we got it. It's only 13 minutes. Right. And so like, then we're giving high fives and stuff like that. So I would say, little things like that, are really, really helpful. So I would, those are some tips.
I know a bunch of moms listening in and dads listening into this podcast right now are going to use that. That is a great way to get your kids on the same team. So back to their gut health, because you talk a lot about the gut immune connection, and we're all, full disclosure for everyone tuning in. I'm on the very, very end of my second round of COVID right now. I'm feeling good. I'm 2 weeks out.
I wouldn't have even known it.
I feel fine. I mean, I had probably 24 hours of the body aches and the sinus stuff, but I think, I think about it and I'm like, it was at the very end of May, and hopefully I have a completely COVID-free summer and I'm all good. So I have no problem putting my immune system to the test, and I'm building up those antibodies and just, having my own little personal, immune army, so to speak. So I'm totally fine with it, but I'm curious what you're recommending. I know you just did the full guide on post-viral, what we should be doing. I'd love to dive into that because I feel like it's really contagious like wildfire right now this summer. So many clients texting that they have COVID, and I'm curious if you wouldn't mind going through what you're recommending for families and for people who've gone through COVID.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for post-viral, so if you're noticing like the fatigue, the brain fog, the symptoms that a lot of people are noticing, shortness of breath, loss of sense of smell, things like that. These are some of the most common symptoms that people are experiencing, and totally normal when you're going through kind of the acute phase, because what happens is your mitochondria themselves, which are what produce all the energy within your cells, they want to protect the cells. So they sense that there is a pathogen. So what they actually do is, instead of creating a lot of energy, right, instead of becoming very, very energy efficient, they actually become very energy inefficient. They shut down energy production and they become pro-oxidative, meaning they ramp up the amount of oxidative stress in the cell, which ages the cell, right? And actually can even kill the cell, right? And you'd wonder, why is the body going to do that? Well, the goal there is to reduce the viral transmission, right? And the goal, the replication of the virus in the cell. So your body's trying to do what it can to heal. So again, if you have a flu, you have COVID or something like that, you're noticing that 48, 72 hours, whatever the acute phase is, totally normal. And you want to listen to your body, obviously, right? Rest as much as you can, relax. There's a lot of different modalities that you can do. But if you're noticing that 2 weeks after, right? So you get better and it's like 2 weeks after, and it just doesn't seem like it's gotten better. 2 weeks after, you just feel like, man, your health is worse than it was before you got this. That is an abnormal sign. It's a sign that your body's not fully over it. Those mitochondria haven't woken up. So they should go into this sort of cell defense mode for a short period of time, but then waken back up, right? And realize, hey, the environment's healthy now. We've gotten this pathogen under control. Now let's turn up energy production and let's get back to our, day-to-day thriving. And so if that's not happening, then what we need to do is start to address the different areas, the different levers in our system. So, one is, are there still reservoirs of SARS-CoV-2 in your system, right? That your body's recognizing. A lot of times that can be in the gut, right? So the gut mucosa, oftentimes, if that's weak to begin with, there could be issues there, right? So doing things to help support that, which intermittent fasting is a great thing that helps support it. Obviously finding a diet that really works well for you. Some people do a little bit better with more fiber. Some people do better with less fiber, less FODMAPs and things like that. So you want to dial in your diet with anti-inflammatory foods, a lot of things that you guys learn on Kelly's show, and obviously be doing that. You want to make sure that you're getting some gentle movement in. So if you're feeling really fatigued, I wouldn't recommend high intensity exercise, but getting regular movement in. Regular movement helps improve oxygenation, circulation, lymphatic drainage. And that's kind of where, when your body's fighting pathogens, it's shoving the debris in the lymphatics. And so movement will help pump that through your body and get it out of your system to help you drain it. So that's super important. Really prioritize good sleep and good sleep hygiene. So a lot of people will say, well, I'm getting, 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep, but, they're starting at midnight, right? And at, 10 a.m., they're watching Netflix, right? With all the lights on, in their house. And so you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you're dimming, like after dark, lights should be dimmed. You can get orange bulbs. So the only light you should be exposed to would be more of like a candle light. It may not be a candle. That's fine. That's great if you do that. But it could be orange bulbs that are dim, right? Or you can get dimmer switches that kind of really reduce the intensity of the white light and the bright light in your house. And then you can wear blue light blocking glasses, right? So I wear blue light blocking glasses, put my kids to bed. They're usually in bed by 8:30. And then it's like immediately I got my blue light blocking glasses on. And so that way, that is going to help reduce the amount of melatonin suppression that occurs. So when you're exposed to light, a lot of bright light at night, that tells your brain, okay, it's midday, right? And so it's not producing the melatonin like it should. As the sun goes down, we should be producing a lot of melatonin. Melatonin is one of the most powerful anti-inflammatories, antivirals, one of the most powerful healing nutrients in your body. So it doesn't just induce sleep, but it helps with healing. And so you really want to do everything you can to maximize that. Make sure that when you go to bed, ideally trying to get to bed by 10. I don't know about you. I mean, that's what we try to do. It's like, we're not perfect people, right? Certainly like on Friday nights, like our date night, we'll stay up a little bit later. But that's usually our goal, trying to get at least a really, really good solid hour of sleep before midnight is so powerful for your body. And make sure your room is cool. There's also something called an Ooler. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah, chili pad. Yeah, exactly. The chili pad, they make the Ooler. That has helped a lot. Like I measure my sleep on the Oura Ring. I don't know if you do that.
Yep.
Man, I've noticed that my deep sleep and my REM, since getting the chili pad, which basically cools, it's a mattress topper that you put water in and it cools the water, sets it at a temperature. Like I put mine at 68 and it's under your sheet, right? But you can feel the change. And I just feel like I sleep so much deeper with that. And I have an eye mask on. I have the room as dark as I can. I also have an eye mask on to block out any ambient light that comes in, and have a fan on, and just really doing my best to try to sleep as well as possible. So getting to bed early is super important. You shouldn't have any goals after 9 p.m. You want to wind down as much as you can. So my wife and I will read, right? Like kind of next to each other. We'll snuggle. We'll talk. We'll do things that couples do, right? And then we'll go to bed and trying to get at least 8 hours in bed, right? So that's usually the goal. So for me, it's 10 to 6. I need less sleep than she does. She needs more. And that's not abnormal, right? A lot of times women do need more, right? Especially after she had 4 kids in 6 years. I mean, 2 kids in 4 years, right? You're going to need a little bit more.
Fatigue. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I mean, a lot of women deal with postpartum and things like that, which is almost similar to the same post-viral, right? Because it's a traumatic stress on your body. Right. So it's kind of the same advice after, giving birth, right? And obviously you're not going to be able to sleep like that, but in the beginning, right? But maybe after the baby's able to sleep better, trying to do these same things. So you want to do that. You want to really optimize sleep as well as you can. Getting up, getting sunlight during the day, this time of year is great for it. So trying to get sunlight, which helps set your circadian rhythm, helps activate your mitochondria. The biophotons coming from the sun do more than just vitamin D, even though that's amazingly important. But they also help activate those mitochondria. So they tell the mitochondria, hey, we're in a safe environment. let's turn up energy production. So trying to get out in the sun as much of your body as possible. So like literally sunbathing. Obviously you don't want to get burnt, but trying to be really intentional about getting as much of your body exposed to sunlight, healthy sunlight as possible. And really during the middle of the day, right? In the morning, middle of the day, when the sun's at its most intense peak, as long as you don't burn, trying to get a lot of that if you're able to, right? Or whatever your tolerance point is. So that's huge. Now supplements. So I talked about a bunch of those things. Obviously we want to pee and poop our way to good health, right? So making sure we're having good bowel movements, hydrating well, urinating, out of our system. If you have access to a sauna, sweat sauna, or infrared's better. If you have access to that, definitely get in the sauna as much as you can. So that's great. But let's fast forward to supplements, because that's what a lot of people want to know. What are the best supplements? Well, yeah.
I want to pause you real quick. Yeah. You just mentioned that infrared saunas are better than dry saunas. I'd love to know, there's been a bunch of different takes on this. I would love to know your reasoning behind infrared. I personally have a sunlit sauna.
Yeah.
It takes a bit to heat up to like 130 or 150, an hour, but it's easy to do. You just click it on. But I'm curious, how long are you staying in your infrared? You said 3 to 5 times a week. But for how long? And what's the goal there? Why do you say that it's better?
Well, both are great. So number one is both of them will activate the heat shock proteins, which clean up cellular debris in your body. So they activate, you get a lot of the same benefits from getting in a sauna that you do from from fasting, right? Where your body starts breaking down old damaged cellular debris, senescent cells, which are older aged cells, mitochondria that are aged and damaged, right? And taking those raw materials and creating new healthy mitochondria, new healthy cellular structures. So it's powerful either way. Both are obviously going to make you sweat, right? Which is a way that perspiration is certainly a way to eliminate toxins. So there's great benefit there. The kind of your sweat saunas don't penetrate as deep, right? So it's more surface level penetration, whereas the infrared saunas can penetrate inches deep into your system. So they're going to really help activate a lot more of that more of the deep visceral fat, where a lot of toxins are stored. They're going to help activate, different organs in your system to help dump toxins. So I think that's really, really powerful. And infrared itself is really anti-inflammatory, right? So you're getting that benefit. The heat itself is anti-inflammatory. And then the infrared as well, that wavelength is very, very anti-inflammatory, very good for reducing pain in the body. So you're getting the benefits. It's basically like stacking modalities. Heat itself is great. And then when you add in the infrared, you're just getting a stacked modality. It's kind of like on my red light therapy device. I have red light, but I also have infrared on that. So if I just did red light, that's great too. That stimulates mitochondria, but it's very surface level, right? So red light will get like your skin. A lot of people use it for anti-aging, right? For really good for skin health. But it's not going to penetrate very deep. Whereas the infrared, adding that in with the red, now gets deeper into the system, right? And that's one of the benefits there with that that wavelength. Infrared is a wavelength that you can't see. Red you can see, right? But they're all on the same spectrum. And so
for your red light and infrared light, I know there's Juvie, there's BioLight. Is there a specific panel?
The one I use is MitoRed. I like the MitoRed. I just felt like I haven't researched all the different brands out there, but I felt like the MitoRed was giving me the best value, right? So it had the red when I bought mine, which was a few years ago, red and infrared, and it was a lot lower cost than some of the other companies that are out there.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
And they are they're a pretty penny. They're an investment, but if you're using it every day or using it every other day, definitely.
Yeah. And I think there's some benefit to them being a little bit more pricey because, now you got some skin in the game, right? So you got to use it because here's the thing. I've talked to so many people that have a sauna and they just never use it. Right. Yeah. And, it's like, okay, do you remember how much you paid for that? Right.
Yeah.
And seriously. So when they remember it, they're like, oh yeah, it's right. I dropped, $3,000 on that. I do need to use it. Right. So sometimes there's a little bit more skin in the game when you got to pay a little bit more for something. You're going to use it. If you use it, you're going to get benefits from any one of those types of devices. So that's going to be powerful. Right. Now, do you want me to talk about supplements?
Yes. Let's dive into supplements.
Yeah. So some of my favorite, of course, all your immune support supplements also work well for post-viral. So your vitamin D, your vitamin C, anything that supports glutathione, especially if you're dealing with, like, a lot of people are dealing with, still some upper respiratory issues, NAC, N-acetylcysteine, because it's mucolytic. It's an anti-mucolytic, meaning that it helps to break down congested, like the thick type of mucus, and helps move that through the system. And it also boosts glutathione. So that's huge. Quercetin and zinc, right? We know that zinc helps shut down viral activity, also helps to balance your Th1, Th2 arms of your immune system. And it does a lot of other things in your system as well. Quercetin is what we call a zinc ionophore, which helps move zinc into the cells more effectively. So taking those together is really good. Quercetin itself is also just great for reducing inflammation, right? So we know that as well, really powerful for keeping inflammation under control, balancing your immune system. We want to do everything we can to balance our immune system. A lot of people use this term boosting the immune system, but really it's about balancing the immune system, because most people are dealing with post-viral syndrome, have a level of hyperinflammation to begin with, meaning that their immune system's already boosted, it's overactive, right? And it's actually causing a lot of collateral damage in the system. So we need to balance or modulate it. I think about it like a dartboard. If you're either not well coordinated with your eye-hand coordination, or you have a blindfold on and you're trying to play darts, you're probably going to, create some damage to your wall, right? Not a smart idea. Whereas if you've got good eye-hand coordination and you can see well, right, and you're able to throw that dart, chances are you're going to probably do pretty well, and you're going to get a lot of those darts right near the bullseye, right? And that's where we want to get our immune system. So when we're taking immune modulating compounds, probiotics, vitamin D, glutathione boosting agents like NAC, quercetin, resveratrol, another really good one, that all helps balance the immune system, which gives you a better chance of hitting the target. So if you hit the target, you're going to be more efficient in general. Your immune system, your body's not going to have to put out as much energy into immune function, and you're going to be more effective in the energy it does put out, right? So that's key. And all of it helps tame and balance inflammation, which is what we need to get under control. So all of those are great. And then we want to support the mitochondria. So coenzyme Q10, high doses of that in the ubiquinol form, I like. So roughly 400 to 600 milligrams, usually in divided doses throughout the day, taken with meals, usually works well. So we start flooding the system with CoQ10, which is a key electron donor and antioxidant in the mitochondria, tells the mitochondria, hey, let's turn on energy production, right? So it kind of gives a signal there, and we start being able to produce energy more effectively. For some people, they need a little bit more B vitamins, right? So B vitamins can be really helpful. B12, folate, B6, those would probably be some of the more important ones, B2 as well. So those can be important. And am I missing anything? I think that's probiotics would probably be a good idea. Support that gut microbiome, like we talked about. A lot of times there's reservoirs of COVID, SARS-CoV-2 in your gut, right? So oftentimes that can be an issue. And then also taking really good care of your mouth, believe it or not. A lot of people don't realize that, but brushing, flossing, oil pulling, tongue scraping, right? Which is another thing you can do to help kind of move bacteria and different pathogens that are in your mouth. That's going to reduce your overall microbial load. And that's going to take stress off your immune system as well.
I love it. This is all great stuff. The oil pulling piece, there's been articles and experts that say you need 20 minutes or it doesn't work. And so people are turned off by being able to do it. I know you mentioned 10 minutes yourself. What's that ritual look like for you? And what do you recommend to your clients?
Yeah, I don't think you need 20 minutes. I mean, even a minute will help. So, whatever you're able to afford to do as far as your time goes, I mean, by 10 minutes, I'm tired of it. Yeah. So, I use coconut oil, sometimes olive oil. But coconut oil is a great oil to use. And the extra virgin olive oil I get for the polyphenols, and it's expensive, right? It's like, whatever, 30, 40 bucks a thing. So I'm like, from a cost perspective, it's actually a little cheaper to use the coconut oil. And that works great. So I put that in there. And yeah, I would just oil pull. And usually what I do is I'll walk like in my house. So I do it like first thing when I wake up after I go to the bathroom, and, I'll kind of grab some, I'll whatever supplements I'm going to take that morning, I'll kind of prep those, and I'll go outside, and I'll just get my bare feet this is a great way to stack things. I want to ground my body. And that's another thing that's really powerful for post-viral syndrome as well, is get connected to the earth, right? Get your bare feet on grass, dirt, sand, right? If you live in Laguna Beach, like you, get out there on the sand. And
every other day, baby.
There you go.
That's why we're here.
That's right. And so that way you get those natural electrons. It's actually like a natural antioxidant that comes in from the ground, just being connected to the ground. And we're all exposed to Wi-Fi and EMF radiation from our computers, cell phones, things like that. I think about grounding like showering from all of the dirtiness of electromagnetic frequencies around us. We're building up kind of this burden of EMF related dirt and dander on our body by being exposed to it. When you go out and you get barefoot on grass, dirt, sand, you're showering that off. So I try to do it multiple times throughout the day. Most people can't, if they're working at an office or whatever, it's harder at least. But if you are able to, that's a great idea. But certainly in the morning, right? If you're able to do that, it's a great way to get started with your day, and you can stack the oil pulling with it. With oil pulling, you don't want to spit the oil in your own sink. Okay. I've never heard of somebody actually doing this, but the wives' tale is that it will actually clog up your, like if you continually do that, it's going to clog up your pipes, right? So you spit it outside when you're finished with it, or in a trash can. So anyways, I'm doing that. I'm stacking that in the morning, and that's a great time to work on your mindset, to pray, right? That's a beautiful time to pray over your family, pray for your country, your world, whatever it is that's burdening you and on your heart and on your mind. Beautiful time to do that and stack all of those things together.
I love everything that you've shared today, Dr. Jockers. It has been such a pleasure to have you on the show, and really like inspiring as a parent and a practitioner. And just thank you for all the work that you put into your site, and for sharing such easy tools with the community. I mean, from getting your boys on the same team, shooting baskets, to really focusing on their gut health, and having those boundaries and delaying their gratification, and supporting your community in this post-viral era. So thank you so much for all that you do, and for being here. It was such a pleasure. Where can people follow along? Where can they learn more?
Well, for sure, Kelly. Well, first, I just want to say it's an honor. Thank you so much for this. I've really enjoyed this conversation as well. And I really enjoy your voice and all the things that you're doing, getting this message out. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on my website, drjockers.com. And I also have a great podcast I'm going to interview you for as well, Kelly. Dr. Jockers Functional Nutrition Podcast. And I'm on social media and YouTube and things like that as well.
Love it. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.